Okay, well, here we are again. I'm going to read a little bit more of The Invisible Dog for you. We finished it at the end of chapter 3, so I'm going to start with chapter 4. There's 8 chapters in all, so there's another 5 chapters to go. So if I read 3 more chapters and then leave the last 2 until another time. Okay, so chapter 4, The Show. Janie's birthday was in the early part of January, and for a treat each year she was always taken to London, to the zoo, or Madame Tussauds, or the Tower, or the Natural History Museum. "What shall we do for Janie's birthday outing this year?" her mother said. "Can you think of something a bit out of the ordinary?" "As a matter of fact, I think I can," Janie's father said. "What?" "Crufts." "Crufts dog show?" "Yes, might be rather fun, don't you think?" "Which day? It's a 4-day show, I seem to remember." "Oh, the 4th day, I think." "Why?" "No, don't tell me, David. I can read you like a book. Great Danes are judged on the 4th day. That's it, isn't it?" "Well, yes, I mean, I know they're your favourite breed, Sally." "Not by any chance yours too?" "Well, yes, but I just thought it might be fun for Janie." "I see. Don't you think it might be a bit hard on the child? She may not be satisfied with an invisible Great Dane. It isn't as if you had any intention of buying a puppy, is it?" "No," said her husband, "though I told Janie she could buy one." "You did what?" "I said that if she came along with £500 clutched in her hot little hand, then I wouldn't stop her buying a Dane puppy. You say the stupidest things sometimes. Next thing you know, she'll be robbing a bank." "Well, shall we go to Crufts, or shan't we?" "Ask Janie." "A dog show," Janie said, when the idea was put to her. "What dog show?" "Crufts, the biggest of them all. There'll probably be something like 20,000 dogs there altogether, of every breed." "Great Danes?" "Of course." "Harlequin Great Danes like Henry?" "Sure to be some, though they'll look a bit different from Henry." "Why?" "Well, you can't see him too well." "Can he come to Crufts?" "No." "Poor old boy," said Janie, fondling an invisible ear. "I'll tell you all about it afterwards." And there's Janie with the collar and her invisible dog. Apart from those old snapshots of Rupert, Janie had never in her life set her eyes upon a Great Dane until that unforgettable day shortly after her 8th birthday. They had walked into the Great Hall of Olympia in London and made their way past the judging of a whole lot of other breeds, terriers and collies and gun dogs and many more. And suddenly there were the giants, a ring full of them. Black and blue, fawn and brindle and harlequin, they stood and showed themselves in all their majestic dignity. The judge was a little woman, small enough, it seemed to Janie, to have gone for a ride on any one of the great dogs whose points she was so carefully examining. Janie and her mother and father watched at the ringside as class succeeded class, and handlers stood their charges before the little judge, or walked or ran round the ring, the huge dogs striding out beside them. Tall men or short men, thin ladies or fat ones, old or young, they each had something in common, thought Janie. A great big beautiful Dane. If only we could have one some day, she said to herself. A man beside them noticed the expression on Janie's face. There's the little lady judging the dogs. Look, she puts her hands down their legs to make sure they're fit and well and that they're a wonderful dog. A man beside them noticed the expression on Janie's face. "Bet you wish you had a dog like one of those," he said with a smile. "Actually," said Janie, "I have. He's called Henry." "Imagine that," said the friendly man. "Henry's rather out of the ordinary," Janie's mother said. "Out of this world," said her father. They stayed and watched till the end of the judging, till the little woman had made her choice between best dog and best bitch. Both appeared equally beautiful to Janie. Every one of the Danes were there, it seemed to her, were faultless. She couldn't see any difference between them except colour. But she desperately wanted the dog to win best of breed because Just by chance he was a harlequin, and her wish was granted. "He's beautiful," Janey said. "Isn't he just? They all were. Weren't they just?" Afterwards they went round the benches, and there he was, with his rosettes and his prize cards and his proud owner. Janey pushed between the small crowd of admirers to get a closer look. The dog, she could see, knew just what a clever fellow he was. He had a kind of smile on his great face, and his long tail wagged slowly and majestically. "He's called Champion Larkmeadow, nobleman of Merlin Court," she told her parents. "Gosh, what a mouthful!" There he is. It's the dog that won the best breed. What was his name again? Champion Larkmeadow, nobleman of Merlin Court. That sounds a big, big name. But his owner called him Bob. "I heard him." "That's better." "Funny thing, though," said Janey. "What?" "He looked just exactly like Henry." Chapter 5. The Tea Leaves. The postbox was at the top end of the village, not much more than 100 yards from Janey's front gate. It was in fact set into the low garden wall of Mrs. Garrow's cottage, and Janey sometimes wondered how the old lady posted any letters she might write. Did she come out into the lane and post them from the front like everyone else, or did she stay inside her garden and stretch over the wall and feel for the opening in the box and post them, so to speak, upside down? No, she wouldn't be tall enough, would she? One day she found the answer. "Take this letter up to the post for me, Janey, will you please?" her mother had said. And Janey set off, the letter in one hand, the lead in the other, the collar around Henry's invisible neck. She was approaching the postbox when she saw Mrs. Garrow come out of her front door, also carrying a letter, and walk across her little bit of lawn to a spot directly behind the bright red box. "She'll never be able to do it, she's too short," Janey thought. But then Mrs. Garrow seemed to suddenly rise higher as she leaned right over the top of the wall and posted her letter. Straightening up, she saw Janey and let out a burst of quacking laughter. "Bet you thought I wasn't tall enough." And there's Mrs. Garrow coming out of her cottage, and there's Janey walking to the postbox. Can you see the postbox in the wall there? There. Okay. "Bet you thought I wasn't tall enough." Hang on, pages stick together. "To do that," she said. "And I wouldn't be if it weren't for these." And Janey could see that the old lady was standing on top of a little pair of wooden steps positioned behind the wall. "I always enjoy doing that, Janey," Mrs. Garrow said, "especially as I always feel somehow that the postbox is mine, seeing as it's set into my wall." "Oh," said Janey, "is it all right if I post my letter in it?" "Of course it is," cried Mrs. Garrow with another volley of quacks. "Though I'm surprised to see you carrying it." "What do you mean?" Janey asked. "Well, I'd have thought that great animal of yours would be carrying it for you in his mouth. Some dogs do, you know." "My, he's a size, isn't he? What's his name?" "Henry," said Janey. And there's Mrs. Garrow peering over her wall and talking to Henry. "Well, I never," said Mrs. Garrow. "Do you know what, Janey? That was my late husband's name." "Oh," said Janey, "I'm sorry." She added, "No need to be sorry, dear," said Mrs. Garrow. "He's been dead and gone these 20 years, though never a day passes when I don't think of him. And you know what? There's a lot in common between your Henry and mine." "How do you mean?" Janey said. "Well, my Henry was a great big chap too. He didn't need a stepladder to post a letter. And another thing, he was quiet, just like your dog." "He doesn't bark much, does he?" "No," Janey said. "Saw one just like him on the telly a couple of weeks ago," Mrs. Garrow said. "Some big dog show it was." "Crufts," said Janey. "We went there." "Did you take Henry?" "No, but there was a dog there just exactly like him, and it won the prize for best of breed. Another Harlequin Great Dane it was." "A Harlequin Great Dane, eh?" said Mrs. Garrow, and she looked down from her perch at the dangling collar and nodded. "I see," she said. "And Daddy says I can have a real one, another one, but only on one condition." "And what's that?" "I have to have £500. That's an awful lot of money." "It's a fortune." Mrs. Garrow looked down at Janey and her invisible dog, and her wrinkled face creased some more into a smile. "Talking of fortunes, Janey," she said, "how would you like me to tell you yours?" "Oh, could you? Oh, yes, please," said Janey. "Come in and have a cup of tea, then." "I'd better ask Mum," said Janey. "You do that," said Mrs. Garrow. "I've got some nice cake." When Janey returned, permission granted, Mrs. Garrow called from her front door. "Come on in." "What about Henry?" Janey said. "He'd better stay in the garden," Mrs. Garrow said. "My old black cat doesn't like dogs." "All right," said Janey, and she came in through the gate and dropped the collar and lead on the lawn. "Down, Henry," she said, "and stay." "Now," said Mrs. Garrow, when they have drunk their... No, we'll try again. "Now," said Mrs. Garrow, when they had drunk their tea, "let's have a look in your cup." For a long moment she studied the tea leaves in the bottom of the cup very carefully. Then she said, "Janey, I think you're going to be lucky." "Why, what can you see?" Janey asked. "Look," said Mrs. Garrow, handing the cup back. Janey looked in, but all she could see was a scatter of black tea leaves at the bottom of the white cup. "I can't see anything," she said. "You've got to know what you're looking for," said Mrs. Garrow. "There's a shape there, all right, a great big shape it is. No doubt about it, and what's more, it's black and white." "A Harlequin Great Dane," cried Janey. "Is that what it is?" Mrs. Garrow smiled her crinkly smile. "I shouldn't be surprised," she said. "And now you'd best get off home." And there they are, reading the tea leaves at the bottom of the cup. That's a very old-fashioned thing to do. Out on the lawn, Janey picked up the end of the lead. "Heel, Henry," she said, "and thank you for the tea, Mrs. Garrow. I hope the tea leaves were right." "Talking of leaves," said Mrs. Garrow, "this lawn is covered in them. I'd better sweep them up. Bye-bye, Janey, dear." "Goodbye," Janey said. For a moment she stood in the lane by the postbox, looking over the low wall. On the lawn, old Mrs. Garrow was sweeping away with a long broomstick of birch twigs, watched by her black cat. That sounds a bit witchy, doesn't it? Okay, we're now at Chapter 6. Chapter 6 is called The Money. "I'm bankrupt," said Janey's mother. "And I soon will be," said her father. "I don't think it's fair. Whoever heard of a dog playing Monopoly? Especially an invisible dog," his wife said. Janey sat grinning, a great stack of money in front of her. She patted the unseen head at her side. "You played well," she said. It had been Janey's idea that Henry should take part in the game. She threw the dice for him, of course, and moved his symbol around the board, and collected the rents from all his properties as well as her own. As always, she played with the top hat, her mother with the flat iron, and her father with the car. Henry's symbol had naturally to be the dog. "Okay," said Janey's father as the car landed on Henry's Park Lane Hotel. "I've had it too. You win, Janey, you and Henry." "Cheer up, Daddy," Janey said. "I've got a nice surprise for you." And from a wad of money she peeled off a £500 note and held it out to him. "What's this for?" he said. "For my Great Dane puppy. Remember what you said? You come along with £500. You said—" "Oh, no, you don't," her father said. "It's got to be real money if you want a real dog. £500 of Monopoly money, indeed. You'll be lucky." "I think I will be," Janey said. Later, Janey's mother said, "I wish you hadn't done that silly thing, David." "What silly thing?" "Telling Janey she could have a puppy if she had £500. You saw the look on her face just now. She genuinely believes she's going to be lucky. It's not fair on the child. There's no way she could find that amount. Either put up the money yourself or shut up about it." "I just might," Janey's father said. "Might what? Shut up?" "No, put up the money. Ever since Janey brought out that lead and collar, I found myself thinking of dear old Rupert and what a super dog he was, and wondering why we never replaced him. And what with Crufts, well, I must admit I'm getting quite keen on the idea. After all, Sally, we are the right sort of people to have a big dog. We've a sizable house and garden. We live in the country and we can afford it." "You told Janey we couldn't when she first asked you." "Yes, I know. It's all the fault of that invisible dog of hers. The more she plays that game, the more I find I want to see an actual living, breathing, flesh and blood Dane on that lead. A Harlequin." And there's Daddy talking to Jane, or to Jane's mother, I think. Janey's mother. Does that matter? Surely any colour would do. Not for Janey, it wouldn't, and it may not be easy to find exactly what we want. We, said her husband. You go along with the idea, then. We'll see. We will, said Janey's father, and he grinned, slyly, it seemed to his wife. What have you got up your sleeve? She said. Not up my sleeve, said Janey's father. In my pocket, and he took something out of it. What's that? An advertisement. I cut it out of the local paper. You don't mean... Yes, listen. Great Dane puppies for sale. Blacks, blues, 1 Harlequin. Price? Doesn't say. Where? Not all that far away. Extraordinary, isn't it? I had no idea there was a Great Dane breeder anywhere near here. And there's a Harlequin in the litter too. What a bit of luck. Janey said she'd be lucky, didn't she? I know. All it needs now is for £500 to drop out of the sky and land in Janey's lap, and I shall begin to believe in witchcraft. At that instant they heard a loud noise outside. What on earth was that? Janey's father said. Her mother went to look out of the window. Oh, it's only Mrs. Garrow going down the lane, she said. She has the most peculiar laugh. I'll say I thought it was a duck quacking. She's chatting with Janey, and she's flapping her hand up and down. Oh, no, I see what she's doing. She's petting Henry. That, said Janey's father, has really made my mind up. If it's got to the stage where Janey is playing her invisible dog game with people like Mrs. Garrow, it's high time we got a visible one. Will you tell Janey? No, not yet. The Harlequin pup may be sold, or it may be a bitch, or it may just be a poor specimen. We must go and see the puppies. When? As soon as you've taken Janey to school tomorrow morning. But you'll be going to work. No, I'm taking the day off. I fixed it at the office. Urgent business. David, you are a sly boots. The postman came just as Janey was getting ready to go to school next morning, and by the time their car reached the end of the village, his van was parked outside Mrs. Garrow's cottage. Whilst he collected the outgoing mail from the postbox, Mrs. Garrow was chatting to him, and she waved at Janey as they went by. Your friend, said Janey's mother. She's nice, said Janey, waving back. And there's Mrs. Garrow with the postman. She's waving at Janey as she went past. Did you enjoy going to tea with her? Yes, it was very interesting. They drove on while the postman got into his van and drove away down towards their house. And that's the end of chapter 6. So we're going to stop there. There's 2 more chapters to go. So I'll read those probably tomorrow and send it to Mummy, and you can listen to them when you're ready. Okay, so I shall say night-night and sleep well, whoever I'm talking to, whether it's Lockie or Merrin or both of you, and I will read the rest of it another time. Okay, bye for now. Night-night.